Welcome back to Grit Gym. It is Thursday, September 20th, and you're coming from the office. I haven't done one of these in a while, just from here by myself. But today's topic is, I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'm going to go from fat loss versus fat shaming. I'm going to go into, is happiness the goal? And I'm going to go into expectations, because I think these have a symbiotic relationship. And before we get going on this, can you guys please click the link below, click the share button below, send this out to everybody that you know. Keep rhyming on the show, and that's three. That's three rhymes. Anyway, but please share this out. This helps us out a ton, and I do this like as a cooperative effort. If you win, I win. If I win, you win. This has to be a cooperative effort for me to keep doing this. But so like. This kind of goes into the whole, somebody called me up last night. I had a phone consultation last night. It was kind of interesting because, well, as a coach, like the absolute best thing that you can do for a coach, the absolute best way to show gratitude or to say thank you is to go be successful with the stuff that the coach taught you. That's the absolute high for me. Like you could send me a gift, you could say thank you, you could do all of this different stuff, but ultimately the greatest thing, the most intrinsic, like the greatest level of like feel good that I can possibly have is for you to be successful. So the more that you guys can push out and use the stuff that you learn on the show, the more that you use the stuff in Grit Gym, the more it's going to fuel everything that we already do. That's the greatest possible way. The greatest thing that you can possibly do is to do that for us, and for us to do that for you. It's a symbiotic thing. But okay, so is happiness the goal? This is one of the topics that we were going over in that consultation last night. Is happiness the goal? Because the word feel good kept coming up. Like it doesn't even feel good to go to the gym anymore. It doesn't feel good to eat right anymore. It doesn't feel good to go on walks anymore. And it's like, well, why does it need to be a feel good? That's one of these expectations that I think that we use. What do you expect? What expectation do you put on happiness is the big question. What expectation do you put on happiness? Do you have to be happy all the time? Because that would really be an outrageous expectation. It'd be an outrageous expectation and a setup for failure to think that you're just going to be happy and elated and feeling good all the time. Because you're going to have moments where you're going to be blah. You're going to have moments where you're going to feel not motivated. You're going to have moments where you're going to feel really tired, that you want to just bow out, that you want to be done. You're going to feel like most people at some point in their life are going to have suicidal thoughts at some point. Now that's something like some serious shit. You're going to have suicidal thoughts and you're like, man, something's wrong with me. No, that is pretty normal. You're real normal. Now remember, if you're here to be normal, you are in the wrong place. And I think all of this is going to come down to right here. Are you going to be afraid that you're not enough, or are you going to be all in today? Now, when it comes to this feel-good stuff, like you can feel good with a lot of different things. You can reach for drugs, you can reach for relationships, you can reach for sex in terms of relationships, you can reach for, you can actually go to doctors who will give you prescribed medications that will make you feel good. It doesn't have to be all just like from your drug dealer around the corner. I don't get the difference between a drug dealer in a lab coat and a drug dealer that drives with 20-inch rims. They both are dealing drugs to me, but you can reach for feel good that way. Is that happiness? Is that the expectation that you put on it? I think that's something to ponder. That's something to kind of think about. How do I get my happiness? And now we have to get into the idea of expectation, because if you just expect, if you look into the Buddhism, I got into this on Tuesday with Rachel. I got into this, sound like we were fighting, but I got into this a little bit. Like the Buddhists, what do you call it? Not an affirmation. Like one of the things is basically like they theorize that life is suffering, and that sounds really awful. It sounds really bad, right? It's like life is suffering. Why would I want to focus on life is suffering? Why would I want to put it in my head that life is suffering? Well, the point of that is that if you consider that life is suffering, and now you can prepare for it. Now you don't expect life to just be like this, like rainbows and all the bullshit that you think it's going to be. Hey. You can prepare for it. You can get tough. This is why I say don't reach for comfort. Reach for the strength to bear it. If you are uncomfortable in a scenario, you don't want to reach for the comfort. You don't want to reach for the comfort food. You don't want to reach for the drug. You don't want to reach for needy, pitiful sex. You don't want to reach for depression medication. I need to back up there because the reason there's a terrible thing going on in our world right now where people live on anti-anxiety and anti-depression medication. Now, that's not anti those medications. You use those medications so that you don't die. That is the entire reason, no doubt about it, the only reason that you use those medications. You do not use them as a lifelong thing. You use them so that you don't kill yourself, because you cannot help yourself if you're dead. You're just done at that point. To our knowledge. Now, if you have this expectation that life is suffering, like the Buddhists go along with, then you can prepare by getting strong enough to bear it. That's why I say don't reach for comfort. Reach for the strength to bear it. Don't reach for the cake. Don't reach for the frosting. Don't reach for the candy bar. Reach for the strength to bear the discomfort of the moment. Now, also on the second level of that, why it's not this really terrible idea to think, oh, life is suffering, is because now you can be grateful for all of the good stuff. Now you can, with all these people that are going through this really terrible time right now, that's sad. It's really sad. The world is full, has a lot of suffering in it, and it always has. But I think that we've painted this picture and this expectation that it's not supposed to be so, when it is. Yes, it is. So if it is, if you accept that life has a certain amount of suffering to it, now every time that something good happens, every time that your kid gives you a hug, every time you hear an "I love you, mommy," every time that you have this really amazing meal, every time you have a really good day, you can be grateful for it. You can be grateful for that thing. And the number 3 thing I think that you really get out of it is that you get to decide. You get to decide whether you're going to go for the comfort or you're going to go for the strength. And I think that that's really, really, really big. So when it comes to, is happiness the goal? Not for me. I don't look at happiness as a goal. If I'm happy, great. That's a big plus. But I don't look at, I look at meaning. I look at purpose is the word that I really use that really resonates with me. Do I have purpose in my life? Is there something that I'm going for? Because if there's not, what's the point? I'm an extremely analytical person, and I'm extremely curious, and I'm like, what are we even here for? And if we're here for something and we're looking at meaning in our lives, I think it comes down to the experience that we're willing to live. And if you're looking at, if you say, okay, well, nothing in life is more important than the experience that you do live, now we have to look at that experience and be like, am I living the experience that I want? Am I living the life that I want to experience? Am I free? Is something holding me back from living that experience? Well, you better find a way to get out of that. If fat is holding you back, then you better get your nutrition on point. If your endurance is holding you back, if you can't run up a flight of stairs, you got a problem. Because that gets into the fat loss versus fat shaming. Maybe that's a good transition. I read this article. This article got big. Rachel's mom actually sent it to me, and she's a very, very, very smart woman. And I read through it, and we talked back and forth a little bit about it. But there's this idea that you have to... This is becoming more and more popular lately, is that you have to pick between loving being fat and being a fat shamer. Those are ridiculous things. When a person that is obese goes to a doctor, and the doctor says... for one, the doctor is required legally to talk with you about your weight if you are obese. So legally, he or she has to do that. It is just a thing. And I don't think that it's wrong to bring up something that could be problematic to your health. I think that is right for the doctor to do that. I think that doctors are really behind in terms of nutrition. I think that we're really behind, not behind, but we really don't know that much about nutrition in the first place. And we're focusing on it as if it's this X's and O's thing when it's really a lifestyle deal. But fat loss versus fat shaming is ridiculous. First of all, you're gonna make fun of somebody for showing up to a gym when they're obese. That's where they need to be. That's an insane notion to me, that you wouldn't try to build safety into a person doing something good for themselves. That's absurd to me. I don't get that at all. We actually kicked somebody out of Grit Gym for being nasty not very nice to somebody that was morbidly obese, that was trying to do better, who couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't sit on a swing set with her kids, couldn't there's no way I couldn't put my arms around her, let alone her kids, and that's what she wanted. She wanted her kids to be able to give her a hug. That seems like something that worth going for. To be able to play around with your kids. I don't have kids yet, but it sounds like they're pretty amazing to do that with. And so this idea that, so the fat shaming is ridiculous, but so is loving the fat. This idea that you're supposed to be obese and be okay with it. Well, obesity doesn't just take away your health. It takes away your ability to live the experience that you want, because you can't run up that flight of stairs. You can't do the things that you want to do. You're weighed down you're bogged down with weight. We know that when people get this, when they have too much, what is that called? Too much skin above their eyelid, and as they age and it starts to wear down, and we get rid of that they feel more energetic. Well, the same thing would happen if somebody lost 100 pounds of weight. You try putting a 100-pound vest on your back and walking around for a day, and I guarantee you feel more tired than you usually do. It's a really sad deal. I've worked with plenty of people who are very, very overweight, and they're not trying to lose weight to make a doctor feel better. They're trying to lose weight to be able to experience their life the way they want to live it. It's a totally different scenario. So this idea that you're just supposed to love yourself through the fat, yes, love and have nothing to do with each other. Very, very little, if anything, to do with each other. Should you hate yourself for being fat? God, I hope not. Should you love yourself regardless of what you do or don't like about yourself? Yes, of course. But to an obese person, they need to lose the fat. No doubt about it. It is not just. You have to think about what health is. Health is the essence by which you are going to be able to live your life. You are not going to be able to live your experience without health. It's not possible. And to give an extreme version of that, think of having food poisoning and trying to live the experience that you want. Good luck. It's not going to happen. So you have to have health. It is just not up for debate. And you cannot have health when you are obese. It's not a thing. I'm not talking about, this article went into cholesterol levels and a lot of things that don't really have to do with health, because we know that cholesterol is a genetic deal. Anyway, I don't need to get into all of that. This was supposed to be a mindset thing, but fat loss versus fat shaming, they're both wrong. You need, if you're over 30% body fat and you're a female over 30% body fat, you need to get down below 30. If you're a male above 20% body fat, you need to get below 20. It's a very simple number. And if you're wondering, come into Grit Gym. We'll throw you on an in-body scanner, and it'll tell you exactly what your body fat composition or what your body composition is. But I think with any of this stuff, with everything that I'm saying here, I think it's a little bit of a toughen up talk. When I first started doing this, I remember the first time I had a consultation with somebody that was just very obese. And the first time I sat down with them, they said something nasty about themselves. And granted, it was nasty, and but I did not confront them about saying the nasty thing. What I did do was try to make them feel better about. I was like, oh well, you're not that big, and they basically said some version of, don't patronize me. Don't patronize me. I know I need to lose the weight. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm completely wrong. That's what you're here for. And that's why you're meeting with me. And that's what I'm here to help you do. And so ever since then, I've been very direct with people. I'm not just like, hey, fatty, you got to lose weight. I'm very gentle. I try to be as gentle as I possibly can with it. But you have to be real with people. They know. It's not like some big secret. And ever since then, I've been very, very direct with people in as gentle a way as I possibly can. But in the last 6 months to 2 years, there's been this wave of you should not tell people that they need to lose weight. That is wrong. That is dead wrong. That is the one of the meanest things I can think to tell people is to remove the hope from them. And there's no better way to remove hope than to say it's not your fault. Yes, it is. The meanest thing that you can tell people is that it's not your fault. And you can't do anything about it. That removes all the hope that they possibly had of changing their circumstances they wanted to change. And that's just mean. That is like the meanest thing that I can possibly imagine. The only thing other than that is to take away somebody's ability to do what they could do for themselves. If you take away somebody's ability to do what they could do for themselves, I think that is the third most mean thing that you can possibly do to any person. I can't imagine doing that to somebody. But anyway, is happiness the goal? You got to get clear with what happy is. And happy is not, in my definition, happy is not a feel good. And what expectation are you putting on happiness? Well, if you're reaching for sex, drugs, relationships, booze, comfort food, well, I don't know. I think that's a short-term feel good that's going to last about 20 minutes to 2 hours, and then it's going to be over. This fat loss versus fat shaming thing, I think both sides are completely ridiculous. And I refuse to pick a side on this thing. I'm not going to sit around and fat shame people, and I'm not going to stop asking people to get below 30% or 20% body fat, depending on if they're male or female. That is completely ridiculous. People need those numbers. They need to get below those numbers, and they will experience life in a different capacity, and they will be a better example of courage to everybody around them. And I'm not saying that, to me, I think those people have more courage than I do. Because think of being a person that walks into a gym and they're 50% body fat and they can barely fit through the door, and think of what's going through their mind. All they're thinking is that everybody's judging them. They're looking around at all these fit people, and they see themselves as twice as big as they are, and they see you as half the size that you are. Like, everything is amplified in their mind, and that takes a ton of courage. Tons and tons of courage. So I'm not going to tell people to stop this thing, and I'm not going to be fat shaming people either. I think it's ridiculous to choose a side in this thing. And this expectation that life is supposed to be rainbows and unicorns and everything's supposed to be wonderful, and no. The expectation is that it's suffering, and then if you have the expectation that life has a certain amount of suffering, then you can prepare for it. And by prepare for it, I mean that you can build the strength to bear it instead of reaching for the comfort to to try to escape it, because the reality is that it's coming. Life is going to hit you whether you like it or not. And the other reason to expect the suffering is that you can be grateful for all of the good stuff, and that you get to decide. You have a certain amount of power over it. And I think you do that by asking yourself every day, just like the shirt says, are you going to be afraid that you're not enough, or are you going to be all in today? So I ask you to please take that to heart. Like, ask yourself those two questions. I ask myself that question every day. Am I going to be all in today? Or am I going to be afraid that I'm not enough today? Please comment, like, share down below, guys. If you guys have... hey, Valentina. Or is that Marietta? All right. But please comment down below. Tell me what you guys thought of this video. Tell me your thoughts around the fat loss versus fat shaming thing. I'd really like to hear your thoughts around happy versus feel good, and your expectations around life. I think those would be really interesting things to hear what you guys' thoughts are. So please put those down below, and then I'll write back as soon as I can, which will probably be about 5 o'clock tonight. Anyway, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.